Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. My name is Adam Thorne, and technically, I'm the host, which I am. But in many ways, in recent weeks, I've become a support act to the main star of the show. I see myself as a Smithers to the Mr. Burns, the Rodney to Dowboy. I'm trying to think of some other famous sidekicks here.
The Robin to Batman?
Yes, Scrappy Doo to Scooby-Doo.
George Costanza to Jerry?
Yeah, that all counts. Anyway, this is my way of introducing a man who has grown in stature over the last few weeks. The reason you're all listening now, Jake Nelson. Jake, how are you?
I'm very well, Adam. And we've got back Ben.
Benjamin Foster.
Liberated from the clutches of the dread Enoch.
It's great to be back here. Great to be back and back in the studio with these two absolute giants of the aviation podcast industry. Now, Australian aviation podcast industry.
I have been having a look at our YouTube views, and I can't remember the exact figures, but in the last few weeks they have dramatically ticked up, and I think that is the increased role of you, Jake. Like you are, all the metrics say, a huge ratings winner. Now, I'm also going to, this is the part of the show where we do shout outs, and I will do a shout out to a man that's just joined the wider team, Jordan. So Jordan actually sits opposite me, and he's right big shot with his 50-inch Mac and all of this kind of stuff. Lovely person, and he started, and I think his job title was social media content, video, one of these newfangled jobs, clever jobs, future-proof jobs. Now, he has told me to capitalise on the success of Jake Nelson that he is in the beginnings of getting this show, get this, on TikTok. We are going on TikTok. I am getting Jake in front of those Gen Zers. Can you imagine? You're going on TikTok.
They'll tear me apart, Adam.
Well,
they're vicious.
They will tear you apart. So we're getting you across all the platforms.
But I mean, speaking of vicious creatures tearing people apart, Ben, how was your captivity in the vents, in the lair of the dreaded Enoch? Is it true that he has eyes that could freeze a man to solid stone with a mere glance?
His Medusa-like qualities of being able to look at somebody and turn them into stone are not a thing of myth. They're real things.
How did you escape?
I prayed to the aviation gods above and the powers that be, and I managed to escape. So I'm very excited to be back here in the land of the living and recording this live with you two fine gentlemen. So
what Ben is saying is, I think if we encounter the dread Enoch, he can also be warded off by prayers to the aviation gods.
I don't know who the aviation god is. I imagine, so
I pray to them regularly.
In is the second, Empire Strikes Back, the second Star Wars movie, and Luke Skywalker, he's out in the snow and he wakes up and he sees Obi-Wan, the ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I imagine you waking up and just seeing the hallowed figure of Alan Joyce, and he's just like, "I'll bring you back. It'll be okay, son."
Oh God, has he not killed me? Am I in hell?
Right, we should do some more serious shout-outs. So we have all manner of events coming up. Ben, tell us a little bit more about what we've got to look forward to, what our listeners need to know.
Yeah, sure. Well, we do have a number of things coming up that I've been working on with many clients. One of the major ones is the Defence and National Security Workforce Awards with our principal partner, Atura. That'll be taking place on the 12th of June at the Four Seasons in Sydney. That is very focused. It's focused across four of our brands. Obviously, Australian Aviation, Cyber Daily, our other sister publications, Defence Connect and Space Connect, where we really are recognising the up-and-comers and initiatives in the Defence and National Security workforce, of course, which aviation is pretty important towards. So very excited across that. Of course, we're also open. We've still got our Australian Aviation Awards that are coming up in August. So we are taking all enrolments or nominations, rather. If you'd like to nominate yourself or a peer or a colleague, please go to australianaviation.com and no doubt read our emails, which come through in newsletters with details of how to enrol for that.
So these workforce awards, I'm considering entering the individual categories. This is an under 40 thing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's more 35 under 35.
What?
You talking to me?
Yeah. So what? So we're saying that if I'm now 37, that I'm now no longer considered young?
Well, you know, you are wise beyond your years.
Yes.
I think is a great way to put it. But technically, we are checking ID at the door.
Oh, no.
And you may not be able to go up and accept that award that you've probably nominated yourself for. But no. It is focused very much on rising up in stars.
Yeah.
Those across the different categories, which will be really looking to recognise those that have done exceptionally well in their respective fields and adduce some recognition. So we're pretty excited about that.
Sounds pretty good. Pretty good. Go and get involved.
When can our listeners look forward to the announcement of these awards?
With the announcements have taken place, we are the event itself will be on the 12th of June. Nominations are closing shortly, and then finalists should be announced early May.
Early May. Keep your ears peeled. Ears peeled. Eyes peeled.
Eyes peeled.
What's
keep your ears peeled. Your eyes to the grindstone.
Dot your I's and cross your lowercase T's.
Yes. Anyway, right, let's kick on and actually talk about some aviation news. So the biggest story, actually, a huge story today that broke last night Australian time, is that after all the kerfuffle, after all the recent problems at Boeing, which now go back a number of years, but obviously we have the big incident where we literally had a door plug, which would have been a door, fly off an aircraft midair, and the Boeing CEO and chairman has basically said, I understand there's problems and I'm going to go. Jake, tell us a bit more. Presumably he's leaving immediately.
No. So Boeing's CEO and chairman, two different people. The CEO, Dave Calhoun, the chairman, Larry Kellner, are both leaving by the end of the year.
Oh, that's...
So CEO Dave Calhoun has said that this is his last year at Boeing, and Kellner has said that he will not stand for re-election as chair of the board. So they are both going. Now, Stan Deal, who is the CEO of Boeing Commercial Airplanes, will be going immediately to be replaced by Stephanie Pope, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Boeing. And this is all coming, of course, from this ongoing turmoil about the safety of the 737 MAX family. As you said, you had that door plug blowout on the MAX 9. And there's still, lingering... what's the opposite of goodwill, bad will? There's still lingering sort of bad air in the industry about the problems with the 737 MAX 8 a few years ago. So Boeing is has been in a fair bit of strife. They're facing criminal investigations over the incident in Portland, and so Calhoun and Kellner are now both saying that they're going to be gone by the end of the year.
Firstly, I love the fact it's Dave. Not David, it's Dave Calhoun.
Dave Calhoun.
Now, I do have a little bit of sympathy for him. So I think he was it the start of 2020?
Start of 2020. I think he replaced Muhlenberg.
Yeah. So he started then, and obviously sort of separate to the problems. Obviously, they had to deal with COVID, which was obviously a big thing for plane makers. Now, the problems at Boeing, you could argue, predate his arrival, and he was obviously put in there to sort it out. So this was a difficult culture, perhaps, that he's inherited. But nonetheless, if we're going to say he's at 4 years on, you can't entirely blame the old administration. It's like when new political parties come to power, they spend the first year going, this was the old lot's fault, we're mopping this up. But I suppose the argument would be that he has had time to fundamentally change things at Boeing, and that simply hasn't happened. I don't know how would you react, Jake?
Yeah, that's probably a reasonable response. I mean, that you've got all of these stories about, even before the MAX 9 incident, there were all these stories about delays for people's, for airlines' MAX 8 orders because of all these problems at Spirit Aerosystems, which used to be the Boeing factory, I believe, in Wichita, Kansas, before that got flogged off to private equity. And so Boeing has been in strife for a while, as you say, all dating back. A lot of people point the fingers at the McDonnell Douglas takeover in the late 90s, where Boeing technically took over McDonnell Douglas, but in practice, McDonnell Douglas really took over Boeing. Again, the saying around, for those who are not familiar, the saying around at the time was that McDonnell Douglas bought Boeing with Boeing's own money, because a lot of the brass at Boeing, the engineers, sort of went out the door and got replaced with the executives from McDonnell Douglas. So all of that, there's been this long history of cost cutting and outsourcing, and it's in these recent years that a lot of people are arguing that the chickens have really been coming home to roost for Boeing.
So essentially, there's this kind of old saying, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going.
I'm not going. Yeah.
And again, there's two sides to every story here, but the kind of a narrative is that seems to have been widely expected was that sort of back in the day, Boeing was a company almost run by the engineers that had that safety and innovation at its heart, certainly in terms of commercial aviation. And as Jake was saying, what's happened is the money men have taken over, for want of a better word, and the problems that exist at Boeing go beyond a simple problem in the process, but a kind of a wider culture.
It's systemic.
Yeah, exactly. And what we saw at the start of the year, with the door plug coming off, was effectively what happened is the nuts and bolts weren't fixed on, for want of I'm sure.
Quite literally.
Quite literally. And when they looked at this, they found a number of other aircraft that had similar issues. It may not have got to that point. So again, it's like this is something that is so bonkers you would never believe it. But if you can have that obvious issues going wrong, that suggests there is a culture where people don't necessarily on the ground care enough.
Exactly, yeah.
I just got a question on this as well. So, horrible stuff that's happening from a safety point of view, not putting a lot of confidence in passengers that are wanting to go through and fly it. But what does Boeing really do to fix it?
Well, this is the thing. So the problem they've got is this becomes a kind of self-fulfilling almost prophecy, because here's the thing. You have safety problems and you have a bad reputation. What does that mean? Less airlines buy your aircraft. Now, we don't know whether it was directly related or not, but we're going to have Qantas go from being a predominantly Boeing airline to soon being a predominantly Airbus airline. You are seeing similar things happening around the world. So if you have a safety problem, less airlines buy your planes, less money comes in, and less money you've got, the harder it becomes for you to say, well, hang on a minute, we need to invest more in our engineers. We need to, have more of a bottom-up kind of approach. It becomes more and more and more difficult. So this is going to be the issue. And also, when we talk about that kind of culture, it's one of the things I always like to rant about is every company, no matter the industry you work in, they love to talk about how great their culture is. But in reality, the people that decide whether somebody's got a good culture are the staff. And changing a culture is about more than, putting on fancy away days and having, perks in the office. But it's true, though. It's about how do you make a good culture, particularly in a world like Boeing. That is going to be a very difficult problem to solve. If you were Dave Calhoun, you will be looking at this and probably he may say, well, I tried my very best. I came in, to sort of fix this problem. I know that's how he sort of talks about it in his statement. I came in at a difficult time. He would argue I did my best to change this, but maybe this was simply too big a problem to solve, or that this is a problem that couldn't be fixed in a few years. This is something that's going to take 10, 20 years to solve.
From a successor point of view, though, surely, and we've seen this in many reports, that the company's been accused of prioritising profits over passenger safety. Too few executives have had engineering experience. So the successor for Dave, old mate Dave, has to be potentially somebody in the ranks, but from the engineering background, chief technical officer, I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like it's too hard a problem to solve to at least get the staff or the Boeing team on board and getting more confidence from a safety point of view for consumers.
I will say, John Oliver from Last Week Tonight did a program on Boeing recently. And there was during a period at Boeing, there was something like upwards of 90% of Boeing's cash flow or something like that, like a staggering amount of Boeing's money that it could have been using to invest in new planes was going to stock buybacks and dividends to inflate the share price.
But we also have to look at how if we kind of agree with this now, is how Boeing got into this problem in the first place. Now, one of the things about aviation is actually a lot of it is about fine margins, no matter where you look. So essentially, if you're an airline putting on a flight, and the statistics do change, you need to be 80% of those seats you need to be selling. If you're a budget airline, it's probably 90% of those seats. Wider airline CEOs get paid so much money because they have to get so many fine details correct, and it's the fine details that make the difference between making billions or making a big loss. It's the same all over the industry. The argument is the reason Boeing got into this problem was it was actually unable to financially compete unless it cut costs. Now, again, you would say there they got greedy, but there's probably an element of both sides to that as well. So how you go in there, maintain profits in what is now a very difficult time. We've got supply chain shortages, this post-COVID world, at the same time as investing in that team and changing in that culture. It's going to be a very, very tricky thing to fix. The other thing as well is that you look at Boeing. So we joked about Alan Joyce said if you're the CEO of Qantas, you're one of those high-profile people in the country. In America, but you're going to laugh. You got Walt Disney and Boeing. Those two great American companies that almost like the nation. Symbolic of the nation's might. It's true. Really? So if you are the CEO of Boeing, you have a very big profile. You're under an awful lot of pressure, particularly now. It's going to take a certain sort of person to come in there who's able to structurally change things, but also who's going to be a good media performer as well, because a lot of this is going to be about how do you sell this to the wider public. That's a very difficult package to find.
Especially when you've got websites that you can put in your flight number and it will tell you this is going to be a Boeing plane, and you can choose. People would be using these websites to say, "Ooh, this is a Boeing plane. I don't want to fly on a Boeing plane. I want to fly on an Airbus plane because I don't think Boeing planes are safe."
Exactly, and you could make an argument that even sort of a few years ago, the flying public were generally ignorant about the aircraft they're getting on. But if Boeing has a bad reputation, like you say, anybody can go on flight radar, anyone can tap it in and find out almost instantly. So these are issues that you didn't necessarily have so much 10 years ago or even 5 years ago.
I will sort of say, Adam, when these McDonnell Douglas people initially came in, from what I understand, there was an explicit focus on moving towards the share price of Boeing and keeping the share price up and keeping the share price afloat, hence all the stock buybacks. I believe on this John Oliver program, he was saying that like after the Lion Air incident with the MAX 8, Boeing promised this fix for the MAX 8's issue with I'm blanking on the name of the system, MCAS or
yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, they promised a fix. That fix had not materialized by the time that Boeing said it would, and in the meantime, Boeing had done massive stock buybacks to again keep the share price afloat. Yeah,
it's going to be a very, very tricky balancing act. The other thing I would say is that, and we joked about it at first, that essentially he's going to continue on to the end of the year. To me, this seems incredibly, I don't know if disingenuous is the word, but on the one hand, you're effectively, even if he's not explicitly saying it, you're effectively saying, well, I've got to carry the can, we need a fresh start. But I'm going to give myself to the end of the year. So that doesn't seem like a rapid fresh start to me. And even if he wanted to now, there's an element he's going to be a bit of a lame duck. That's the thing. You give yourself, and I know there were different circumstances with Alan Joyce and Qantas, but the second he announced that he was going to go at the end of the year, that inevitably didn't happen. So whether he manages to get to that point, I don't know. But certainly now you would argue his authority is gone.
Yeah, it's not a great position for a major company CEO to be in.
Just on the Disneyland and Boeing, point though, how many kids for their 10th birthday? Where do you think they'd rather go?
Well, a lot of our readers.
Do you think
when
do you
they
think
were
they
younger?
Do you think they should start up like a Boeing Plus subscription service? I don't know what they do with it, but I mean, I'm available for consultation.
This sounds like the sort of thing where I'm going to put you on the spot now, where your mastery of wordplay and puns that you could think of some Boeing-related Disney Plus programs.
Boeing-related Disney Plus programs.
Yes.
Look, the first thing that came to mind is aileron like Mulan, but that's terrible.
No.
God.
I've really put you on the spot there. That's
Did
cruel.
Boeing make the B-52? Was B-52 a Boeing plane? The bomber.
I do like if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. There's got to be
It
some
was.
spin-off there.
So hear me out.
Go on.
Beauty and the B-52.
That's good, to be fair. That is good. That is good. I put you on the spot. That was a naughty thing for me to do. But you know what? You can have that. You can have that.
Tail is old as time.
Yeah.
Hey, but going back to Milan, Muhlenberg, the old CEO, give him a movie where he has to get down to business and defeat the Huns. Where in this situation, their Huns are Airbus.
You've got to quit while you're ahead. You knock out a great pun. Everyone loves it. Exit stage. Right, now you're a man of musical. You're a musical theatre. Leave them wanting more is surely the golden rule. But you just keep coming back like an encore. It's like, well, people want to go to the toilet now,
Encores are addictive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's just forget the last bit didn't happen. That was good. The initial one was good.
I think the second one was good as well.
Okay, welcome back. So, as we were talking about previously, Jake Nelson is, of course, the king of wordplay of extraordinary stories. But by day, his day job is to be a news reporter. And I've got to say, he is a sensationally good news reporter. And this morning, Jake got a very, very good story, which is a kind of a follow-up to the incident that happened last night as we record this with a Qantas A330. Jake, tell us a little bit more.
So this happened on descent into Perth on Monday night. You had an A330-200 coming in from Melbourne. Now this... The passengers heard a loud bang. The crew shut down one of the engines. It's fine that the plane can operate on one engine. They came in safely to land in Perth. Qantas has said they're looking into the incident. It was not an emergency landing. No emergency services were on hand, but they did not need to make an emergency landing. They just got a priority landing. And Qantas, their engineers are going to be looking into this. The pilots union has commended the crew for, a very good job getting that plane down safely. Most important job of any flight crew is to get the plane down safely. But what I sort of uncovered as I was looking through and saw the exact plane that was involved, this plane is VHEBA. It is actually the oldest wide-body aircraft in Qantas's fleet. Now, there are a handful of older planes, but they are all either 737-800 narrow bodies or freighters. So this is the oldest wide-body passenger aircraft in the Qantas fleet. They got handed over on October 2000. Well, it got manufactured in October 2002, and I think Qantas got it in 2014.
Now, to be very clear, it's not necessarily the case that if you are on an older aircraft, that therefore makes it more dangerous. That is not the case. But when people sort of say, how long does an aircraft last? What's its lifespan? Just like a car, it can last as long as you want. But of course, the older it gets, the more likely things are to go wrong. And so more the maintenance that has to be done. And so it ends up costing that airline more and more money, which is one of the biggest reasons, of course, that airlines go and buy flashy new aircraft. The issue that we've got is that about a year ago, the Qantas Pilots Union basically suggested that there was what they called a failure of fleet planning by Qantas because they didn't have enough long-haul, wide-body international aircraft to service these routes. And they said effectively you weren't forward planning enough. And you've now got a situation where you haven't got enough aircraft, and also, of course, that we have a kind of an aging fleet. This is something when we had, when I had my favourite co-host Boo back, hi Boo, save me, when we had Boo back, and he was saying now he lives in the US now, and he came back and he said the first thing that struck me coming back to Australia was just how old the aircraft are here, The world has almost moved on from a lot of these old models. Now, it's not just as simple as it would have been pre-COVID of, well, we're going to catch up, we're going to put some money down, we're going to get a load of new aircraft in, because we've still got this hangover of COVID. We've still got all these supply chain issues due to it being difficult to get hold of parts, too many people taking early retirement, perhaps too many people leaving the industry. So it's actually very difficult for Qantas to get hold of new aircraft. Now, to be fair to Qantas, they did sort of listen to this criticism, and I think about a year or so ago now, or sort of 9-10 months ago, they announced they were going to be buying 12 new Dreamliners and 12 traditional A350-1000s, and this was a lot of that is about replacing these old A330s. I think the Dreamliners, the first of the Dreamliners, are scheduled to arrive in FY27. So still a few years away. But the problem is, and no one necessarily knows, but the problem is both Boeing and Airbus have been experiencing delays from getting in new aircraft, and that could get better. It could get worse. But still, Qantas are years away from being able to replace these old A330s with that next generation of aircraft. And again, it's not the case that you get to FY27 and one day 20 aircraft just turn up. It's a staggered thing.
Yeah,
it's a staggered thing. It's difficult. Of course, it's not just as simple as buying the aircraft. You have to retrain pilots, engineers, get everything ready. The longer
CASA certification.
All of these things are messy and inevitably take time. So the problem we're going to have now is that Qantas, actually like Virgin as well, are going to be stuck with this older fleet of aircraft and the inevitable issues of varying sorts that come up.
So realistically, you're saying that it's going to take at least 3 years or 3.5 years, to get the first of of the new planes into the fleet. How long, for our listeners, how long will that take to fully replace a fleet? And over what sort of time?
It all depends how many of them arrive.
Yeah, because, Virgin Australia was expecting its remaining, I think, 10 737 MAX 8s this year. But because of the troubles at Boeing, as we've heard last week, they're only going to be getting 4 by the end of this next year, with the remaining 6 to be coming, 2025 at the earliest.
You've got this absurd situation that...
And the MAX 10s, of course, have yet to be still certified in the US.
You've got this crazy situation that arguably more than any country in the world, Australia relies on aviation. It's a continent country. You need aircraft to make stuff happen. But we're going to be in a situation in a few years where we're going to have such an old fleet. We're going to have such an old-fashioned set of aircraft. And again, other than the maintenance costs that come from that, these new generation of aircraft are a lot more fuel efficient. They allow airlines to make money or drop prices. So this is all going to be bad for customers as well.
Now, one could point out, and many have pointed out, accompanied with vicious personal abuse, that the age of the airframe does not necessarily reflect the age of the engine. So the engine it could be quite a bit newer than the plane itself, which is true. And, engines get sort of taken out for maintenance and fixed up all of the time. But the thing is, we don't know how old the engine actually was. We don't know how we don't know how its last sort of maintenance went. We don't actually know why the engine went bang in the first place. And it's all sort of, there's a symbiotic relationship, isn't there, between the airframe and the engine?
Yeah, again, it's not just like if a car crashes and the mechanic turns up and goes, oh, this was wrong with it. So the ATSB investigations into crashes and major incidents, they can take up to, I think, 4 years is the longest I've done. They're traditionally about 18 months, 2 years. It might be 6 months, but certainly it takes a long time and a lot of study to work out exactly what went wrong. So it's not necessarily as simple as that. But still, the rule remains: the older the aircraft is, the more maintenance, the more money it's ultimately going to cost you, because the thing's just older, just like everything else. The other thing I would say as well, from a kind of a sort of a positive point of view, and praise to Qantas here, is that for those of you who may not be aware, most aircraft, just like these A330s, can fly perfectly well with one engine. In fact, in a lot of ways, they can fly pretty well with no engines. They can glide for a while. So losing an engine isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. But the biggest thing here is if you are in an aircraft, you hear a bang, and the captain tells you, we're going to shut down one engine. I mean, if it were Ben, he'd actually cry. Like, he'd actually cry.
Well,
he would cry. It would be pathetic.
I was in the middle of a rom-com from the new Boeing Plus streaming service.
Fantastic. Yeah, love at 30,000 feet or whatever.
No, that's all right, yeah. But anyway, the point I was making is...
Liner of dreams. There we go.
Quick.
Where was I? Yeah, but the point is that even though there was, and as Qantas pointed out, there wasn't like an emergency landing. things relatively were going to be okay. If you are unfortunate enough to have a Benjamin Foster on your plane, the panic will set in. The crew have to deal with that. The crew have to calm nerves. Everybody has to think, how do you handle this situation? How do you not panic people, etc., etc., etc.? So that Qantas crew had to unexpectedly deal with that. I'm sure did a very, very, very good job. And again, it's one of those things where, as Chris would say, you think of cabin crew, not just about serving you food. They're predominantly there for safety reasons and to handle these kind of situations. It does seem from what we've read that everybody did a very good job with that.
And we'll be interested to see what happens when, if and when the ATSB report comes out, or, if and when Qantas determines what went wrong with the engine, whether it was a problem with the engine with itself, whether something went wrong with the connection or the electrics or whatever, other hundreds of things that could have gone wrong with an engine.
A point on this to put comfort back or confidence back into consumers or customers. How often do airlines go through and release public or PR or information basically about an incident like this?
So in general, and again, I shouldn't really say this, but each year in Australia there's around 50 sort of serious incidents involving aviation. So the ATS,
you should not say that.
No, the ATSB. We will get, on average, around one report a week. Sometimes you get 2 a week and sometimes not. But on average, you get around that. The majority of those incidents
General aviation.
Yeah, they're basically involving...
light planes.
It's very rare that you get a incredibly serious incident. We very rarely do them. But credit to the ATSB, they will look at every single one of those. And the ATSB, the talent these people have is huge because not only do you have to understand the aspects of flying a plane and being a pilot, you have to understand things from the engineering point of view. You have to understand the kind of the factors of the emotional factors of the people on board, how that team might work with each other. They conduct a very thorough investigation, and it's almost like when the police are investigating a crime, not that it's a crime, you have to be across every single detail. You read these ATSB reports, they go into a staggering amount of detail. And that's really important because by doing these things, they stop similar problems happening again.
Every air crash prevents more air crashes.
Yeah.
Every air crash makes the industry safer.
Yeah, exactly. And also the ATSB, this our Australian version here, they are regarded as one of the very, very best in the world. They are brilliant. And I remember when I started doing this job sort of 4 and a bit years ago, I was just staggered at how extraordinarily detailed and thorough these things are. So I went on a bit of a tangent there.
No. Confidence for the consumer is always key.
But there we go. Another big scoop from, as some of our commenters have dubbed me, the work experience kid, which I can only assume is a cowboy nickname, honouring me for how experienced I am at my work.
Yes.
That sounds like a great addition to Boeing Plus. The work experience kid. What a TV series that will be.
Yeah, it'll be good. When they
shooting them down at the...
crack of dawn.
At the high noon. The highest of noons.
Welcome back. Now, my favourite story of the week involves the British Defence Minister, Grant Shapps. This is extraordinary. Jake, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so this was over, I believe this was at the Victorian Grand Prix. Or no, it was not. But it happened at the same time as the Victorian Grand Prix over the weekend, unless the Victorian Grand Prix happened at a completely different time.
It's called the Australian Grand Prix. I know. I mean, I find the whole thing boring.
I'm an aviation journalist.
Yeah,
okay,
you don't need cars.
Not a car journalist. But this was actually on Thursday last week as we're recording this. It shows how much I know. The work experience kid strikes again. But the UK Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, was hitched a ride between Canberra and Adelaide on a RAAF Super Hornet. So there was security briefings, and then Shapps got in the Super Hornet and got a nice little trip to Adelaide. Apparently,
what I love about this, and this is the whole thing is nonsense. So technically speaking, the line that we've been given is the reason that he did this was because the RAAF flies the Super Hornet and the RAAF doesn't, and this was a way for our AUKUS friends to show a platform that the UK doesn't have. I'm crying bullshit on this. I'll tell you what actually happened.
This is a family podcast.
I know. Excuse my colourful language. I'll tell you exactly.
Children listen to this podcast, Adam, for some reason.
I'll tell you exactly what happened. The Conservative Party in the UK are in a world of trouble, and they are so far behind in the polls that it would take a miracle of Alan Joyce proportions to save them from getting turfed out of office at the end of the year. So Shaps is the new Defence Secretary, hasn't got long to go. He's got his bucket list of things to do, and he said, "You know what? I wouldn't mind a flight on that aircraft from the last Top Gun movie that we don't have, so I can tell the family."
They
and the
don't
kids.
have the last Top Gun movie?
Well, they do. We do have cinemas.
How recently was that?
Well, nothing in the UK works. So he's basically turned around and thought, I want to tell my mates down the pub, I got in the Top Gun aircraft. And it's utterly pointless flight. And to be fair, I would have done exactly the same thing. I have as little integrity as him. I'd have been like, you know what? Might as well. Kicked out of office anyway. No one cares anymore. I'm going to hit you right. And he's done it, the little sneaky sod. In Australia, no, it won't be reported that much back at home.
Surely.
No, it's not going to.
This is a nation that the UK, that compares whether or not an outgoing prime minister can outlive a cabbage.
Yes.
Okay, so can lose trust, and that didn't happen.
She wasn't even an outgoing prime minister. She was an incoming prime minister.
Well, she was the shortest serving PM. But that being said, surely this will be blowing up in the UK, and it's not going to do it. His chances of re-election, if as far a shot that is, it's not going to do it any good whatsoever.
Well, I do have an unfortunate revelation about Grant Shapps. Before he took on the defence beat in August last year, he was transport minister, and his big focus, get this,
planes,
trains. Boo,
Boo,
boo, yeah. So he's finally been released from the hell of ground-based public transport, and he's gone, you know what? I'm going to get in the fighter jet. Yeah, absolutely shameless. Absolutely shameless, but I do love it.
I think Bronwyn Bishop would be quite upset about this back in the day from her helicopter flights and whatnot. Yeah, but not a great look, I would have to say, but a pretty cool bucket list. Or red balloon. I wonder if you play for with a red balloon voucher or whatnot.
See, that'd be all right, wouldn't it? If you just did it on a holiday thing, like if he paid his own money and didn't.
Well, he got a bit caught out. So the ABC
just a Groupon.
So the ABC got this story initially, and then Defence had no choice to confirm it. I would wager one of the reasons that they had no choice to confirm it was because one particular plane spotter happened to be filming it. Of course,
really?
And managed to film. So there were two Super Hornets that flew off at the same time. And because this happened, because it essentially shares a runway with Canberra, obviously got quite a bit of attention. So I'm sure if you zoomed in enough, you'd see his little happy little mug in the in the back.
So the plane spotter's gone through, filmed this, which is essentially media gold, and gone through and sold it for a profit, perhaps?
I don't know. No, you put it on his own. No, these YouTubers, they get it on their own YouTube channel.
Right.
This will be like Jake when he's on TikTok. It'll all be about, you won't be saying people like, get my TikTok followers up. But nonetheless, so the whole thing is very funny. And what appalling journalist would jump to use that video? Of course, I did that straight away. The video immediately embedded. With that, but no, I would say we did embed it. But the YouTube user Capital Aviation, love your work. That's what we want to see.
By the way, for your reference, gentlemen, if you do want to take a 25-minute flight in an L-39 jet fighter out of Camden, New South Wales, it is $1,800 per person.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty good birthday present.
Pretty good, isn't it?
When it says, take the ride of a lifetime in an L-39 jet fighter, be Top Gun for the day, experience the enormous 4,000 pounds of thrust and a series of high-G combat maneuvers at speeds of up to 910 kilometres per hour, all in the company of one of Australia's best jet fighter pilots. You get 25 minutes in the jet fighter, you get safety and mission brief, you get a full flight suit and helmet. That's what you'll pay for if you want to get a jet fighter flight out of Camden. Where I don't know, presumably back to Camden.
And now a word from our sponsors, Camden Airport.
Well, obviously in return, the British are going to be giving you, I believe, a fleet of, and I'm not a seaman, a fleet of submarines, British-made submarines. God help you for those. God help you.
Do you think our defence minister is going to get to have a ride in a submarine now?
I mean, wow.
A British submarine.
No.
Yeah.
So this is actually true.
It's a yellow submarine.
This is the second time Grant Shapps has been in the news recently, because a few weeks ago, so Britain, I say we, I'm basically Australian now, but we obviously have nuclear submarines.
One of us.
We have nuclear submarines that fire nuclear weapons, and once every 10 years they try this out. Not by firing a nuclear weapon, because that would be insane, but by firing like the torpedo or the missile, but without any nuclear warheads on it. But they do everything else as the same. So Grant Shapps was invited, this is true, down on the Trident submarine for this big test. Obviously, he's the boss, so trying to impress him. And apparently, the missile flew up out of the water and then just went plop. Just about
the missile just flew up out of the water and nuked Birmingham.
No, it went plop. And so he's there. So he just watches this thing splash in the water. That is British engineering for you. That is what you've got coming your way.
That's a visual metaphor for the Tories' election chances, you'd have to think. Richard Marles should now get to go down in a British submarine and push the button.
Yes. I mean, you couldn't do a worse job. Anyway, so that's Grant. I love you. If you are listening, Grant, love you. You're bonkers.
If you are listening, Grant, please do not nuke us from your submarines.
No.
For starters, the missile would not reach us. You would just end up blowing up Cardiff.
Yes. Right, anyway, let's move on to another fun story I heard about.
Speaking of blowing up Cardiff.
Yes. Well, no. This is something far before my time in Australia, though I've been like 7.5 years, but this goes way back. So when Jetstar began in Australia, they had I say it was iconic, it looks absurd, TV
Yeah, that's
campaign.
why it was iconic, Adam.
Yeah, so basically they're going to we're going to remake this TV campaign. But Jake, talk me through this original advert, because I watched it and I thought this is the biggest piece of rubbish I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, you got Magda Sabansky on a parade float, singing to the tune of Cole Porter's "Let's Fall in Love" about "Let's Fly Jetstar." It was iconic, Adam. Was it really? She was the face of Jetstar when it launched.
Look, Magda's been around for a long time. Personally, I can't really remember the ad.
Let's do it. Let's fly Jetstar.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now that you sing it, does bring it back a little bit. But I hope that it's going to be a pretty memorable revisit of the expo. This also ties into as well the new Qantas safety videos that are going on. They're going through a lot of revamps at the moment, trying to drive more.
And we had
customers.
that talk about the RAAF ad the other week as well.
Yeah.
But no, so they're not going to get Magda back. Apparently, they're going.
Magda?
They put out a casting call last week for Australians to basically share their positive memories of Jetstar.
Positive.
Yeah, good luck, fellas. To share their positive memories of Jetstar over the last 20 years, of which, let's be fair, I'm sure there have been plenty. I mean, there've been mid-air weddings, mid-air proposals, all sorts of. You've been around for 20 years. People are going to have at least some fond memories of you. And so the good people at Jetstar put out a casting call saying, Australians who have who've flown with Jetstar, who have great memories of Jetstar, come tell us your stories. We will pick our favorites and we will put them in this ad. This ad campaign recreating the original Let's Fly Jetstar.
My view is that what they need to do in terms of maximum attention is bring back the maestro, Alan Joyce, of course. He before going on to be Qantas CEO was, of course, Jetstar CEO. That is what the punters want. Bring him on this float thing here. I 100%. I should have him walking through the streets of Sydney or whatever. Or
where was that
whatever
filmed?
it is.
Where was this originally filmed? It looks like
I fear that with
Tamworth or
I'm not sure. I do fear, Adam, that any ad involving Alan Joyce walking the streets of Sydney would perhaps unfairly turn into that scene from Game of Thrones where people just start pelting him with rotten objects, potentially unfairly. I mean, he's
now. I've just had an idea. I've had an idea. So I know. So if
you're not pelting me with rotten fruit.
No, I'm not saying this right. So if you are anyone from the Qantas group, if you are watching this, and I'm sure Vanessa, I'm sure you're watching this. So the concept of this video is that we're going to get ordinary people with real life stories, but what you need is a bit of stardust. What you need is the king of aviation. You need Jake Nelson.
Chris Fenton.
No, we need Jake Nelson. So basically, don't have to give him a starring role. Just someone in the background. Maybe just pops his head up at one point. Just something he can show the grandchildren or whatever one day. If you could get Jake Nelson on that, it would be amazing.
He's very theatrical.
Please get him involved. And Jake is a star of stage to screen, so he's got performance experience. He wouldn't let you down on the
award rates too.
Yeah.
He does it,
I feel like my chances are lessened after mentioning Alan Joyce potentially getting pelted with rotten fruit.
Oh, we can just, we'll edit that out. We're Enoch.
Alan, if you're listening, I don't actually want you to get pelted with rotten fruit. I'm sure you're a very lovely man.
Let's get Jake Nelson on the new iconic Jetstar advert. Let's make it happen.
When's it due to air?
No idea.
They're going to be filming it in April. Filming it in April, and I believe it's going to be released in conjunction with Jetstar's actual 20th anniversary celebration in May.
What star power do you reckon they're going to have? They're going to have some... Because it's back in the 90s, so you're going to have a couple of 90s, maybe...
The 2000s. 2004.
2000, sorry, yeah. What sort of...
It's understandable, Ben. Only 90s kids remember the 90s.
It was a great time. Top three celebrities you think are going to make an appearance in the ad?
Well, I mean, my knowledge of early
celebrities.
celebrities just involves people I've seen on Neighbours, but apparently nobody's watched Neighbours in Australia for about 25 years.
Well, Magda, surely Magda's got to make an appearance.
Well, reportedly she's not coming back.
Who is Magda?
Magda Sabansky. Oh, mate,
Who isn't Magda Sabansky, Adam?
She's a sweetheart of Australian comedy. Kath and Kim.
I've heard of it. I've not watched Kath and Kim. I've heard of it.
That's why you're not a citizen yet.
So this Magda is like a major star, like an iconic...
She's been on Full Frontal back in the day. Shot to Fame, obviously more so. This just cemented her Australian presence. Kath and Kim, she was... What was her character again in Kath and Kim?
I have a confession to make. I was a bit too young for Kath and Kim at the time.
Oh, here we go, eh? Here we go. Call yourself a true blue.
Okay. But anyway, no, she's an absolute sweetheart of the Australian comedy scene. Has been around for a long time. And Magda, we hope you get back on that float to promote the Orange Star.
I think the real Magda Sabansky is the friends we made on the way.
Sure.
On that note, it probably is now time to wrap up this show.
Yeah, I can hear Enoch growling from above us.
But before I go, we'll thank my two co-hosts, Benjamin Foster. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Thorne.
Cheers. And Jake Nelson, thank you very much.
Thank you, Thorne.
And we will be back on this circus the same time next week, but for now, from us...
A flying circus, if you will.
That was good, to be fair, and you slipped that in just before I was about to shut it down as well. Yes, that's what we should call it now, the flying circus.
I think the Monty Python people might sue us for that.
Oh, don't worry about that.
That would be an honour.
That
would be an honour.
That would be an honour.
Please, Mr. Clee, sue us.
We will be back on the show the same time next week. From now, goodbye.
Goodbye.